வர மாட்டேங்குது. You are presenting your screen. வருதாப்பா என்னோட பவர் பாயிண்ட்? பாஸ்கர், பவர் பாயிண்ட் வருதா? ஹலோ
சார், இப்ப டிஸ்கனெக்ட் பண்ணிட்டீங்க, திரும்ப கனெக்ட் பண்ணுங்க சார்.
கனெக்ட் பண்ணிட்டேன்.
ஷேர் கொடுங்க சார், அங்க கீழே ஷேர்னு இருக்கும் சார்.
ஜாயின் நவ்.
சொல்லுங்க சார். என்ன வரல சார்?
விண்டோ. எனக்கு ஏன் அது எங்கேயோ இதாயிடுது. ஒரு செகண்ட் பா. ஷோ எவ்ரிவன். அலோவ்ன்றது வர மாட்டேங்குது. செலக்ட் விண்டோன்னு போட்டா
சார் அதுல உங்களோட பிரசன்டேஷன் வந்து அந்த ஸ்கிரீன்ல காமிக்கும் சார். அதை கிளிக் பண்ணி ஷேர் பண்ணாலே போதும் சார்.
இல்ல, நான் இமெயில்ல அனுப்பி விட்டுட்டா உங்களுக்கு?
சரி சார், அனுப்புங்க சார்.
உங்களுக்கு அனுப்பி விட்டுறேன், அது பெட்டர். நமக்கு அது இந்த பிரச்சனை வேண்டாம்
சார். இப்ப அனுப்பிச்ச மெயிலுக்கே அப்படியே ரிப்ளை பண்ணிருங்க சார்.
அப்படியே ரிப்ளை பண்ணி அனுப்பி விட்டுறேன்.
நீங்க சேஞ்ச் ஸ்லைடுன்னு சொன்னீங்கன்னா நான் சேஞ்ச் பண்ணி விட்டுறேன்.
என்னப்பா?
நீங்க ஸ்லைடு சேஞ்ச் ஸ்லைடு நெக்ஸ்ட் ஸ்லைடு சொன்னீங்கன்னா நான் சேஞ்ச்
நான் சொல்லும்போது நீங்க சேஞ்ச் பண்ணி விட்டுறலாம்.
ஓகே சார். ஓகே
ஓகே. அனுப்பிட்டேன்பா. உங்களுக்கு வந்துருச்சா பாருங்க.
இந்த ஒரு நிமிஷம் சார். இந்த வந்துருச்சு சார்.
வந்துருச்சுல?
இந்த நான் ப்ரெசென்ட் பண்றேன் பாருங்க சார். சார் இப்ப கொடுக்குறேன் பாருங்க சார்.
ஓகே, கொடுங்க.
சார் ஓகே
வந்துடுது.
ஓகே சார். ஓகே. நீங்க உங்க டாஸ்க் ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ண உடனே நான் இதை பிரசன்ட் பண்ணி விட்டுறேன்.
ஓகே ஓகே. நான் சொல்லும்போது நம்ம இது பண்ணிடலாம்.
ஓகே. இப்போ நான் சேஞ்ச் பண்றேன் பாருங்க சார். வருதா?
ரைட்.
ஓகே சார்.
ஓகேப்பா.
நீங்க நெக்ஸ்ட் சேஞ்ச் நெக்ஸ்ட் லைன் சொன்னீங்கன்னா நான் இங்க சேஞ்ச் பண்ணி விட்டுறேன்.
நான் சொல்றேன். நான் சொல்லும்போது நம்ம அது பண்ணிடுவோம்.
ஓகே சார். ஓகே. இப்போ நீங்க இங்க பாரி சார் இவங்க சேர்பர்சன் இருக்காங்க சார். பேசுங்க சார்.
புஷ்பராஜ் சார் தான் சேர்பர்சன் போட்டுருந்தது. இப்போ பாரி சார் இருக்காங்களா?
இல்ல சார்.
சரி, ரைட்.
சார் எக்கனாமிக்ஸ்
organizing secretary and our chairperson is available. Therefore, if you want to interact, you can interact. He's saying like that.
Right sir. இப்போ presentation வந்து எப்படி நான் இங்கிலீஷ்ல பண்ணனுமா தமிழ்ல பண்ணனுமா?
Sir, it is in English, sir.
It's in English.
Because
okay.
It's an international seminar.
Right.
The persons are linked in Malaysia, Singapore, Sri Lanka, and three of them from other state also.
Right.
Therefore, the presentation would be in English, please.
Right, sir. I'll do it in English.
Please, thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you want to use some quotes in Tamil, you can use it. Since we are all Tamilian, let them know our Tamil words also.
No hassles. I'll do it in English.
Yeah. Now and then, if you want to use any powerful message in Tamil, 1 or 2 sentences, you can use it.
Sure.
Yeah. Since we are from Tamil Nadu, let them learn Tamil also.
That's right. Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I will do that. I'm online now.
Yeah. The session going to start 10:30 today.
Okay.
That's what we'll wait for some more time. Even if you have any work there itself, you can do it. We'll start exactly 10:30. Now it's 10:21. Another 8 minutes is there. 9 minutes is there.
Okay. Okay.
Since we came in a little earlier, we have do all the formalities, set the things.
That's true. That's true. Otherwise, it would have been difficult at that point of time.
Yeah.
It
Sir,
would be
of course.
unnecessarily delayed.
Yeah, sir. For me, we are having another one webinar on
Okay.
youth and community development.
Youth and community development. Okay.
Yeah,
When
if
will
either you or any other good resource persons are there, if you are giving the name before 3 o'clock today, I can add them. Hello? Hello?
Sir,
Hello.
Is it?
When will this meeting be, sir?
Yeah, it is on 4th and 5th. 5th, second session, morning 11:30.
Okay, it's in August.
Either IAS officers, IPS officers, or professors, or whoever may be.
Okay. Then you can do one thing. You can talk to the previous police commissioner of Madurai, David Asirvadam.
Yeah, David Asirvadam, can I get his number?
I'll find out and let you know.
Oh, okay. He's also a competent personality.
Yes.
Therefore, we can make use of him.
Yeah, I will get you his number.
Please,
I
sir.
will talk to him.
Very kind of you.
I'll find out.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome. Welcome.
Thank you.
Kamaraj sir. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Kamaraj sir.
Dr. Swamikandan sir, if you want to talk, we talk to him.
Yeah.
I hope you want to say something to.
With Kamaraj, I want to say.
Yeah, you can talk to him.
Yeah, he's online.
Yeah, he's online. Sir,
And, Mr. Kamaraj.
Dr. Professor Samuel Asir Palraj. Professor Palraj.
I'm Asir Raj.
Yeah, Asir Raj.
I want to talk with our technological support center, Kamaraj.
Oh,
sir, I am not Balraj, sir. I am Bhaskar.
Bhaskar.
Sorry, Bhaskar.
Yes, sir.
என்னுடைய போட்டோ கீழே ஆன்மீக கதைகள் என் பேர் இல்லாம ஆன்மீக கதைகள்னு வருது.
அது நீங்களே மாத்தணும்.
அப்படி அது எப்படி?
அது இதுல போய் என்டர் பண்ணணும்.
எப்படி?
பாஸ்கர் அண்ணனுக்கு ஒன்னு சொல்லுங்க.
சார், நீங்க 2 டிவைஸை கனெக்ட் பண்ணிருக்கீங்க கரெக்ட்டா?
எது? ஆமா, 2 பண்ணிருக்கேன்.
ஒண்ணுல உங்க பேர் கரெக்ட்டா காட்டுது, இன்னொருதுல தான் வேற மாதிரி காமிக்குது.
ஓ, சரி. ஒண்ணு கரெக்ட்டா காமிக்குது. இப்ப சரி, பாஸ்கர் வந்து எனக்கு ஒரு சிஸ்டத்துல என் போட்டோ வந்து எனக்கு டிஸ்ப்ளே ஆகல, ஆனா இன்னொரு சிஸ்டத்துல ஆன்மீக கதைகள்ட்டு என் போட்டோ டிஸ்ப்ளே ஆகுது.
அதான் சார், அது நீங்க யார் பேசுறாங்களோ அவங்க போட்டோ தான் ஃபர்ஸ்ட் டிஸ்ப்ளே ஆகும்.
ஓ, சரி.
நான் பேசுறேன் பாருங்களேன், அங்க லோகோ வந்துருதா?
ஆமா.
சோ யாரு டாக் பண்றாங்களோ அவங்களோட இமேஜ் தான் ஃப்ரண்ட்ல வரும்.
ஓ, சரி. இல்ல, இப்ப ஆனா இன்னொரு சிஸ்டத்துல என்னுடைய இது வந்து என் போட்டோவோட ஆன்மீக கதைகள்னு இருக்கு.
இல்ல சார், நீங்க அதை பின் பண்ணி வச்சிருப்பீங்க. உங்களோட போட்டோவை செலக்ட் பண்ணீங்கன்னா பின்னு ஒரு ஆப்ஷன் வரும். அதை பின் பண்ணீங்கன்னா உங்க போட்டோ மட்டும் தெரியும், வேற யாரும் தெரியாது.
அப்படியா? சரி, அதை பின் பண்ணலையே. அதுல என்ன பண்ணுங்க, பின் டு ஸ்கிரீன் இருக்கு. நான் அதுல கர்சரை வச்சா
அதை பின் பண்ணுங்க சார், அவ்வளவுதான்.
பின் பண்ண என்டையரா என் போட்டோ வருது. என்டையரா
சார் ஒண்ணுமில்ல சார், நான் சொன்னேன்ல நேத்து, அந்த 3 டாட் இருக்குல்ல,
ஆமா அந்த வரேன்.
அதுல போயிட்டு சேஞ்ச் லேஅவுட் மாத்திக்கோங்க.
சேஞ்ச் லேஅவுட். ஓகே. அது இன்னொரு சிஸ்டத்துல கரெக்ட். அப்ப அந்த ஆன்மீக கதைகள்ன்றத மாத்த முடியுமா?
இல்ல சார், அதை நீங்க க்ளோஸ் பண்ணிட்டு உங்க பேர் காமிக்கல, அதுக்குள்ள நீங்க வந்துருங்க சார்.
ஓ சரி சரி. அப்ப அதை க்ளோஸ் பண்ணிடவா?
ஆன்மீக கதையில க்ளோஸ் பண்ணிடுங்க சார்.
ரைட், ஓகே.
சார் புஷ்பராஜ் சார் வந்துட்டாங்க சார்.
Yeah,
Right.
Dr. Kamaraj. Thambi, very good morning.
சார் ப்ளீஸ் அன்மியூட் சார்.
Yeah, I'll unmute it.
Yeah. Good morning, sir. Good morning.
Good morning,
I'm
ma.
back.
Yeah, your resource person Asif Raj sir is online now.
Yes.
If you want to interact with him, you can interact with him.
Yes. Samuel sir.
பாஸ்கர்
சொல்லுங்க சார்.
இப்ப என்னுடைய போட்டோ வந்து இது அந்த ரைட்ல சைடுல இருக்கு
சார். நீங்க அந்த லேஅவுட்ல மாத்துங்க. இங்கே கரெக்ட்டா வருது.
அங்க கரெக்ட்டா வருதா? சுவாமிக்கு என்னன்னு வருதா?
சார் இத க்ளோஸ் பண்ணிட்டு இன்னொரு டிவைஸ் ஆன் பண்ணீங்கன்னா அதுல வந்துருங்க.
சரி.
ஓகே.
இல்ல அதுலயே ஆன்மீக கதைகள் தான் காமிக்குது, இதுலயே ஆன்மீக கதைகள் தான் காமிக்குது.
இல்ல சார் நீங்க ரெண்டு டிவைஸ்ல இருக்கனால உங்களுக்கு காமிக்குது.
இப்போ ஒரு சிஸ்டத்தை ஆஃப் பண்ணிட்டேன்.
இல்ல நீங்க இப்ப பேசுறத ஆஃப் பண்ணிட்டு அந்த இதுல வந்துருங்க.
ஓ சரி.
அதுல உங்க பேர் கரெக்ட்டா காமிச்சிச்சு.
ரைட், ஓகே. இல்ல அதுலதான் ஆன்மீக கதைகள் காமிச்சது. இதை மாத்த முடியுமா? ஆன்மீக கதைகள்ன்றது மாத்த முடியுமா?
சார் செட்டிங்ஸ்ல போயிட்டு உங்க நேம் சேஞ்ச்
செட்டிங்ஸ்ல போய் மாத்தணும்.
ரைட், ஓகே. அத அப்புறம் பண்ணிக்கிறோம்.
சார் ஒண்ணுமில்ல. இத இப்ப நீங்க பேச டிஸ்கனெக்ட் பண்ணிடுங்க.
இல்ல அதுல வந்து மைக் இல்ல, அதனாலதான் இதுல பேசுறேன்.
சரி சார், ஓகே. ஒண்ணும் பிரச்சனை இல்ல.
ஓகே.
சார் சார்
இதுல மாத்துறதுக்கு எது ப்ரொசீஜர் இருக்கான்னு கேட்டேன்.
இல்ல சார் அது ஒரு 10-15 மினிட்ஸ் ஆகும் சார்.
அல்ல வேணாம்.
புஷ்பராஜ் சார் ரிசோர்ஸ் பர்சன்.
Dr. Swami Kannan is now a reputed personality of our webinar. Therefore, whether it is coming as Anmiga Kadagal whatsoever, our chairperson Swami Kannan is online, can understand everyone. Don't worry.
Yeah, because I have separate channel Anmiga Kadagal.
Yeah, okay. Oh, great. Today we can know that.
Yeah.
Unless it is not displayed, we cannot know that you are having such channel.
Yes, I have channel.
Okay, great. And what about Dr. Sadasivan sir, whether he can enter?
He will come.
He will come. Because if he comes little earlier, Vinayagadasan sir is online, he can interact with him.
Yes.
Vinayagadasan sir, are you ready for showing slides and all? Vinayagadasan?
Yeah, I'm ready for your slides.
Yeah, you check everything, Paka.
Yeah, I have checked everything.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
சாமுவேல் ஆசிர் சார்.
Yes.
மொபைல் போன்ல வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா உங்களோட தலைகீழா வச்சிருக்கீங்க, அதனால உங்க பிக்சர் தலைகீழா தெரியுது.
இது தலையில தெரியுதா?
Now it's clear.
ஓகே சார். ஓகே.
Now it's clear.
Okay.
Now it's clear.
ஓகே சார் பக்கா.
Right.
Thambi Muniandi. Bhaskaran?
Yes sir.
Shall we start now?
Yes sir.
Because 10:30. Okay?
Yes sir.
Yes. My most respected resource persons of today and chairpersons, reporters, and my palpitating and throbbing participants. Very good morning to you all. Our respected chairperson, today, the second day of the international webinar on challenges and opportunities for migrant laborers in the age of COVID-19, organized by the Department of Econometrics, School of Economics, and Department of Youth Welfare Studies, School of Youth Empowerment, going to be start within few seconds. As we scheduled 10:30, it is now our watch is struck 10:30. That's why we are starting the second day technical session today. The second day technical session, third chairperson going to be a chairperson, Dr. S. Pusparaj, Associate Professor and Head, Department of Econometrics, Madurai Kamaraj University. And for the technical session, reporter will be Dr. A. Kannan, Assistant Professor, Department of Environmental Economics, Madurai Kamaraj University. And our respected resource person will be from Head and Department of Sociology, Director C, SSC and IP, Manon Maniam Sundarana University, Tirunelveli, Professor S. Samuel Asir Raj. On behalf of the organizing secretaries, I would like to welcome you. Now, I hand over the session to our respected chairperson, Dr. S. Pusparaj, Associate Professor and Head, Department of Econometrics, Madurai Kamaraj University. Chairperson, sir, shall I hand it over?
Yes, sir.
Chairperson, sir, Swamikanan, sir.
Yes. We
Now,
can
the session
proceed.
is handed over to our respected Professor Dr. S. Pusparaj.
Okay.
Okay.
Good morning to you all. This is indeed a great pleasure to invite you all for this third technical session on the second day of the international webinar. Today's session titled Challenges Faced by the return migrants during COVID pandemic, returning interstate migrants during the COVID pandemic. As we all know, this problem, this COVID-19 has created a huge problem for the migrant workers, especially the interstate migrants. Actually, they are the ones who are visibly seen in the pandemic period. The plight of them has attracted the international and the national attention largely. The special thing is, even the Supreme Court has intervened in this issue. In fact, governments were called to answer and called to respond to those migrant laborers' plight. According to 2011 census, it is stated that 5.4 crore interstate migrants are there in India. Though it is sometimes the people called this a very underestimated figure. People unofficially estimate it to about 25 crores in 2020. They are poor people. Historically, they are from disadvantaged and disadvantaged caste and classes. Mostly they moved from villages out of indebtedness, suffocating agrarian relationships, caste oppressions, and patriarchal oppressions. In fact, most of them are oppressed by these forces that still very vibrant in the village setting. And they are pushed from villages because of the stagnant wages. Stagnant agriculture has led to the stagnant wages, and these are all the conditions, circumstances from which laborers were pushed from villages to the cities. That too, cities from other states. They serve in a very very congested situation. Actually, they were lowly paid. The labor market condition is lowly paid jobs. They were employed, and mostly they were on informal contracts. Informal contracts not covered under the labor laws. Though there were laws relating to these migrants, especially the Interstate Migrant Workers Act, Workmen's Act, they don't cover them much because the statistics are not there with the government. And these people mostly engaged in textile sector. There are reports which say about 22 crores people are engaged in textiles. Of them, about 70 to 100%. Actually, it ranges. In some places 100%, some places 70% of the workers are interstate migrants, and they are engaged in domestic industries. Mostly, the urban middle class family are employing the domestic workers. They are engaged. These are all domestic women workforce are from this segment. Brick lines, employs about 2.3 crores. Mines are employing about 1.2 crores. Street vendors are about 1 crore. Rickshaw pullers are about 1 crore. And construction workers, actually, even the construction workers are from the interstate migrant laborer category. Construction industry is employing about 6 crore people. Right, on the whole, people say about 25 crore people are employed in this sector. The state of origin of these people are Bihar, UP, Jharkhand, West Bengal, Chhattisgarh, and Orissa. Mostly, these are the state which supplies migrant laborers. This is the general setting of the interstate migrants, and the COVID-19 has made the government to respond with lockdown, abrupt lockdown. Actually, without even giving a notice, it was suddenly announced. Because of the abrupt lockdown, factories are shut down. Actually, in most places, factories are shut down, and in the urban, actually, the construction activities were stopped, and the migrant workers were thrown out of most of the urban middle class families for the fear of this COVID problem. Right, shops were closed, and because of that, they were not having any payment. Actually, no payment was done for the non-working days. No food was available on the street. No shelter was provided. So these are all the problem that suddenly entrusted on the migrant laborers. The government could not respond. That is the biggest problem. Right? Actually, government could not respond with much reluctance. The central government, announced a package. On the third day, they gave some, relief to the migrant laborers. They announced about 3,500 crores. Actually, it is, this roughly about 140 rupees per head. 140 rupees, because if it is 25 crore people who are on that category, the allocation of 3,500 crores is about 140 rupees per head. It is very pittance, very small amount. The government announced Shramik Express trains to port the people from their place of work to the place of native. Till today, they have transferred about 50 lakh people. It is no very small number compared to the larger issue. And mostly, these people were confined to detentions. The immediate reaction of most of the states in this regard were they were all kept in detention centers. Food and other provisions were, very small, and they were put to untold miseries. But most of the people, traveled on foot and tempos and buses. Some, went by cycles, bikes. many had many problems, including the ones some 30 odd people died on the spot in the train accident. Actually, these are all histories that we saw. They were all criminalized also. Actually, most of the places they were kept and criminalized. This is the fate of the interstate migrants. Of this setting, actually, our speaker, today's speaker, Dr. Professor Samuel Asiraj, is presenting is giving his presentation. He is currently the director of Center for Diaspora Studies, and he is currently in charge of Center for Study of Social Exclusion and Inclusion Policies. And he is a well-known sociologist of this country, and actually he is currently working on the areas of migration, labor issues, diaspora issues, and the human rights issue. Actually, so these are all very closely related to the topic of this webinar. And I wish to invite Dr. Samuel Asiraj for this program. Actually, this is the most this is going to be a very illustrative webinar. I'm looking forward to listen to him. Let me welcome. Before that, let me tell this presentation is going to be about for 30 to 45 minutes. Actually, after that, we'll have time for question answer session. Actually, I hope rapporteur will also be taking notes after the question answer session. Rapporteur will give his rapporteur report. So this is the three things we have in mind. And now over to Professor Samuel Asiraj.
Thank you, Dr. Pushparaj. I am very happy today to participate in this international webinar. And the topic selected by the Madurai Kamaraj University is really an essential one, because migration has become a global issue and not just an Indian issue. But migration, the problems faced by migrants is quite unique in many countries, particularly in India. When we talk about interstate migration, see, normally when we talk about migrants in the diasporic level, we talk about people migrating out of a country and moving into another country. But here in India, right now, we are going to talk about interstate migrants and the problems interstate migrants faced during the COVID pandemic period. See, yesterday you would have been listening only to basically economists, and you would have had a lot of statistics to offer, because this is a webinar which is organized by the Statistics department, so they will have a lot of statistics. But I'm a sociologist, so I don't work with statistics, but I'm going to give you the ground realities as faced by the migrant workers during this COVID pandemic. Well, first of all, one should understand that not only in India, in most South Asian countries, the economies are, the country's economy is basically built, I would say, by the migrant workers and the casual workers, particularly after liberalization swept through the world after the Reagan-Thatcher period. The Reagan-Thatcher period forced liberalization on many countries. Many of these Southeast Asian countries which were in debt were asked to open up their economies, were told to liberalize their economies and create a momentum through privatization and delicensing. But in most of these economies, what happened is that you found immediately a momentum was a dynamics was happening, which where people were moving from one place to another to go for work in other places. So in that respect, when you see, you find today, and quite often many of these people who had migrated were invisible. The local populace hardly ever bothered about them, their quality of life, and their lifestyles. When a person moves from one place to another, he or she would find that they are confronting new cultures, new languages, new food, new customs. Everything is new. And it becomes quite difficult to engage with another population, particularly when most of us are adults, to engage with another new culture and new settings. For a temporary period, it is possible, but for a longer duration, it becomes a little difficult. But yet, in countries like India and South Asia and Southeast Asia, a lot of people went ahead, got themselves jobs on temporary basis in many places. So when you look at, first let us define who's a interstate migrant worker. In India, we have, according to the Interstate Migrant Workmen Regulation of Employment and Conditions of Service Act, 1979. Bhaskar, can you show the presentation, please? PowerPoint presentation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
In that, when you see, it states that interstate migrant workman means any person who's recruited by or through a contractor in one state under an agreement or other arrangement for employment in an establishment in another state. That is a person who's who's recruited by a contractor. That is very important. See, the person who's recruiting is a contractor, and this contractor need not be a registered contractor. He could be anybody. And he picks up people from one state under an agreement or arrangement. See, very often these are not legally enforceable agreements. That is why the state itself says it's an arrangement for employment in an establishment in another state. So these people have to compulsorily move from one state to another. And very often they don't come under any of the legal premises of a worker. And so they are deprived of salaries. They have to work only for wages. That is one of the major issues when we talk about migrant worker. So let's look at why people move interstate. Next slide, please. There are many economic reasons for people to move from one location to other. Dr. Pushparaj mentioned a few of those reasons, and we call them sociologically, and geographers also call them push and pull factors. So we look at what are these push factors and pull factors. Next slide, please. The push and pull factors for migration are basically, the push factors are associated with the area of origin. In a place of origin, people are pushed out. Now, right now, if you see, Assam, Bihar are facing floods. During floods, people are hardly having anything to eat in those places because those states are very poor states. So automatically the push factor, the floods, the ecological change becomes a push factor for these people to move out of their state in search of employment, in search of better quality of life. So they come across from their state to another place. And that becomes a push factor. Ecological reasons become a push factor. And likewise, we'll see all the other factors also. The pull factors are those associated with the area of destination. Now, when they are pushed out, where do they go and settle for a temporary basis or for a permanent basis? That becomes the pull factor. So, push factors, when you see, next slide, please. Push factors are poverty, lack of job opportunities, unemployment and underdevelopment, poor economic conditions, lack of opportunities, exhaustion of natural resources and natural calamities like droughts, earthquakes, floods, etc., scarcity of cultivable land, inequitability in land distribution, no agricultural production. Most of these people who are pushed out of their places of origin is also because most of them are uneducated or they are school dropouts. So the opportunity to get better jobs and better pay is very difficult. So many of them prefer to move out of their places of origin to places where they feel that they can get better wages. Next slide, please. The pull factor is the pull factor is area of destination, where they can go for employment, where they get higher wages than in the place of origin. Now, for example, in Bihar, most people usually work there. If they get cash payment, they're getting cash payment only up to 150 rupees to 300 rupees per day in agricultural work. So when they move out from Bihar or Jharkhand or Chhattisgarh or Assam and they come to places like Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Andhra, Karnataka, Kerala, they get higher wages from 700 rupees to 1000 rupees per day. So these kind of higher wages also determine the decision to make a move. Some of them move for higher education opportunities, better working conditions, and very importantly, in India, you have a caste system which discriminates against people. So when people feel that they will be discriminated lesser in some other part of the country, they move out of their area of origin to a destination where they would be facing less discrimination. And secondly, urbanization is another major reason for people to move out, because in their villages, they hardly get schooling or medical facilities. So for the sake of the medical treatment also, a lot of people move out. Next slide, please. So I have put a list of push and pull factors. I can make these slides available to you through the Madurai Kamaraj University. You can have a look at it. And when you look at the extent of migration, the census of 2011 states that India has over 400 million migrants, more than 40 crore migrants. But next slide, please. But when you look at, this is 2011 data. Now we are in 2020. And in 2020, this would have doubled, I would say. It's not going to be stagnant at 400 million. It would have doubled, or at least it would have become 600 million. So that is a very old statistics, but we are yet to go for the new census. In 2021, when we have the new census, we will have a better idea about this. And the second problem with interstate migrant labor is that most of these migrants are not registered. And when they are not registered, the state does not have a real idea about the true idea about the number of people who have moved across borders. So the places which have been receiving migrants are Delhi, Gujarat, Haryana, Kerala, Maharashtra, Punjab, Tamil Nadu, and Andhra Pradesh. They have been major destination for migrants. And particularly Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Kerala, and Tamil Nadu have been major destination for many of the North Indian migrants. And the states which have been sending out migrants are Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, to an extent Andhra Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand are states which have been sending out migrants. So when you, as Dr. Pushparaj said, when you look at these kind of migrants, most of them are either semi-skilled or unskilled. Small portion is highly skilled. When you talk about highly skilled migrants, they are either highly educated or they have technical skills. And very often people in technical skills, they end up working in good industries on a kind of a semi-permanent jobs. But most of the unskilled migrants or semi-skilled migrants end up working in unorganized sector, such as construction sector. Construction sector employs a huge amount. Textile did at one time employ a lot of people, but now it has been projected that the construction sector is one sector which has been employing a lot more people as migrant laborers. And construction sector employs carpenters, masons, plumbers, electricians, bricklin workers. In these kind of areas, it employs. Then agriculture and plantation industry also employs a lot of migrant laborers. Hospitality industry, that is tourism industry, lodges, hotels, all these kind of industry, they also employ a lot of migrant workers. Then road laying industry, domestic workers, jewelry making, they are employed in cashew processing units, plywood factories, flour mills, quarries, brick kilns, hotels, slaughterhouses, petrol bunks, pumps. All these kinds of places you find migrant laborers employed. Next slide, please. So when you look at India's economy, a large part of the economy is being fueled and sustained by this informal, unorganized migrant workers. According to the report of the Committee of Unorganized Sector Statistics to 2012, they constitute 93% of the overall workforce. 93% of the workforce in India consists of unorganized sector. So that means organized sector is just about 7%. And this organized sector is banks, life insurance corporations, teachers, and people working in government jobs, these kind of people. And if you see, these unorganized sector people are contributing to up to 50% of the GNP, not GDP, GNP, gross national product. So, but what are the legal provisions under which these people are protected? You see, most of these people do not come under any kind of protection because they are not unionized. Trade unions don't work among them because today they are here, tomorrow they are out working in another location. So they are hardly able to be organized. Only the state of Kerala has recognized these migrant laborers to an extent and has provided them with ration cards in certain respects where they can get their rations from the public distribution system, permitted their children to be in schools, government schools. They've been given admission in government schools for education. They've been given. So only the state of Kerala. No other state has undertaken this to this extent legal provisions for migrant laborers. So overall, when you see such a large workforce that we are seeing, they are not covered by any legal protection. So they are open for exploitation. A person may get the wages at the weekend, or he might even get at the month end, or it might even get postponed, or he might even get initially, as I said, when the contractor brings them, they talk, an arrangement is made with regard to payment of certain amount of wages. But in the end, they might receive much lesser amount of wages. And if they protest, they may be asked to leave the site, work site. And if they leave the work site, it means they are going to go without wages till the time they get another job. And getting another job may become next to impossible if they don't have local contacts. So all these pushes a migrant labor into a kind of a situation where they have no bargaining power with regard to their work, and they have no social security, which leaves them. And if at all they're left jobless, they become they may be starving for a long period of time. So next slide, please. The Periodic Labor Force Survey 2017-18 says that 71.1% of the workers in the non-agricultural sector with regular salary did not have a written job contract. In how the industry operates, it gives them a regular salary. Regular salary means it's a wage. Salary includes a lot of allowances. These people don't get allowances like travel allowance or medical allowance or house rent allowance, but they get certain amount of wages. but it is not a written contract. So the job could continue for a duration of time, and suddenly they may be thrown out of jobs. 54.2% were not eligible for paid leave, and 49.6% for any social security benefits. Today, as a teacher, I have 2 months of vacation in the month of May and June. But a worker in an industry, it becomes a very big luxury even if he can get 3 days off as paid leave. They don't get paid leave at all. And 49.6% do not get any social security benefit. They don't have access to government medical treatment very easily, like ESS, Employees State Insurance Corporation. And Employee State Insurance Corporation benefits gives them not only pension to a certain extent for illness, they are taken care of. If there is death in the family, it is taken care of. And for many other family issues also, the government provides. But many of them don't come under this coverage. The report of employment in informal sector and condition of informal employment of 2015 says 77.3% were not getting paid leave and 69% were not eligible for any social security benefits. See, I've given 2017-18 and 2015, 2 different reports. When you see 2 different reports, you find 2 different data emerging. In one, it says 69% are not eligible for any social security benefits. In another, it says 54.2% were not eligible for any paid leave and 49.6% were not eligible for social security benefits. This is much, much, much higher. This is only, we are only projecting as far as to the extent of coverage of social security benefits. Okay. So when you come to the idea of COVID, you find that during infection, almost every country went into a lockdown globally. And in Government of India, the Prime Minister announced the lockdown suddenly on March 24, 2020. When the announcement was made, just about 6 hours was given for people to move out from the place of work back to their home state. And in many parts of India, you have to travel 2 days to reach home states. It's not easy for a migrant worker to cover 2,000 to 3,000 kilometers within 6 hours. So when the lockdown was announced, factories and workplaces just simply shut down. Lakhs of migrant workers suddenly became penniless. Many of them had to undertake a loss of income, and they did not know how to pay whatever little rents that they were paying in those places of stay, and food shortages. No migrant workers has stored food at home, like a middle class person. So they buy food for their immediate use. And with shops and hotels closed down, they faced hunger. There was absolute uncertainty about the future because government first said they are closing down the country for 30 days from March 24th. Then it was extended by another 30 days. For 60 days, many people faced hunger. Some were helped temporarily by the locals and NGOs, but many could not be helped with regard to their food. So they did not know what to do. The only decision left on to them was walking back home. And if you see, just imagine about 40 crore people walking back home. It becomes impossible, particularly when COVID infection is supposed to be a pandemic. The infection could be very high. But lakhs of people started walking back home because of no transport. And on the way, they had no money, no shops were open, no work was there, and no public transport. So either they had to bicycle home, walk thousands of kilometers, and many would have died. Nobody knows exactly how many died. Only what was reported we know. We don't know how many got infected by the COVID. That is also possible. But anyway, it seems that government of India did not want to look into such kind of data. And also it was also not in a position to collect that kind of data. And when you are walking home, when lakhs are walking home, social distancing was not possible. Since they were traveling together, they had to protect themselves. They were traveling together in large groups. So they could not maintain a physical distance. Many were arrested for violating the lockdown after being caught in the interstate borders, forests between states, and even on boats to cross the rivers. The government issued orders for lockdown, said nobody should be seen on the roads. So when people were walking down, as long as they were walking down the highway, very few were disturbed. But when they were walking out of those towns and cities where they were working, they were arrested or beaten by police, violently treated by police for violating the lockdown. Next slide, please. So many died in accidents on the roads. Many died of exhaustion of walking 1,000 kilometers, and just on reaching the borders of the state, they used to die. Many were trying to hide inside vehicles. They were being smuggled out or smuggled into their hometowns. In that, some of them became, who were asthmatic, they also died. There is no data, no exact data for all this. Many migrant workers were beaten up by police, particularly in UP and Bihar, when they reached their borders. And in the borders, many were fumigated. The government of India and the state governments treated many of these people as vermin. They made them sit on the roads and they sprayed the disinfects on them, not bothering to see how these disinfects could affect their health. And that too for people who are walking all the distances, more than 1,000 kilometers, 600 kilometers, and reaching home exhausted. In Aurangabad, Maharashtra, 16 migrants were killed on 8th May after a train ran over them when they were sleeping on the tracks, exhausted from walking. See, nobody knew trains were shut down. During the lockdown, there were no trains running. But some goods were being transported across the country. Now, many thought trains are not running, so they slept on the track. And the 16 migrants were run over by train, which the train driver did not know that these people were sleeping on the tracks. So such kind of tragedies occurred. And a 15-year-old girl carried her father on a bicycle for 1,200 kilometers from Bihar to Gurgaon over a course of a week. A young girl, 15-year-old girl, she was later appreciated. But the point is that this is how people were transporting their young. The young were forced to transport the old. Okay, so that way, migrant workers and a lot of migrant workers also decided to stay back during the exodus, facing assaults from their neighbors. In many places, migrant workers who reached home, since the state said that they have to be quarantined, and there were no quarantine facilities, they were not allowed inside the villages, and they were forced to live in the forests and in the outskirts of the villages. And they could not also go to buy food because they had no money. And at the same time, they had to face police brutality in their own villages after having walked. Next slide, please. So, migrants who returned to their hometowns and villages were treated with either fear or there was a class bias against them. See, class bias in the sense that since these people are migrant workers, they were very poor. They were returning without any money. So, both the middle class and the dominant groups in the villages refused to permit them to enter the villages because they feared them to be carriers of coronavirus. They were forced down with disinfects or soap solution in some places. And in many places, many of these migrant workers belong to Dalit community, lower caste communities, and were considered to be untouchable. So they were on the road, and when they reached their villages, they were insulted as being corona carriers because they are Dalits. Next slide, please. So if you look at the number of deaths that were reported, in March, we go into a lockdown. In May, there are about 300 deaths reporting, with reasons ranging from starvation, suicides, exhaustion, road and rail accidents, police brutality, and denial of timely medical care. People died of starvation in 2020, in the month of March, April, and May. And because they were facing loss of job and no wages, many people could not feed their families, so they committed suicide. And on the road, after walking 500, 600 kilometers, not getting water in the summer season, not getting food, and not able to sleep in anywhere, many died of exhaustion. Only 300 was reported deaths, but many died of exhaustion. There were road accidents and rail accidents, but more were injured due to police brutality. And since hospitals, private hospitals and government hospitals refused to take these people inside for treatment, some died due to lack of medical help. And most reported deaths were among the marginalized migrant workers and laborers. 80 died while traveling back home on the Shramik special trains in 1 month after their launch. See, the Shramik special trains is a very important thing to be talked about. The Supreme Court, what it did is that cases were filed against the government of India. And on June 9th, Supreme Court came out with an order that all migrant workers should be transported back to their homes, and on the way back to their homes, they should be provided food and water. So this order came from Supreme Court only on June 6th. The entire month of April, May, people were left to their own devices. Only in June, you find the Supreme Court acting after coming to know that there were many cases of death. And it says that state has to provide trains for transportation. Now, Shramik trains, the railways were in a confusion because they could not run trains as they regularly ran on a timetable. Trains had to be allocated to the states. Now, I was working with a group of NGOs trying to transport people from Coimbatore region in Tamil Nadu to Jharkhand and Bihar. In the month of June, we had about 600 trains being allocated totally. And around the 600 trains, Tamil Nadu received only about 32 trains, not more than that. It's a very big Tamil Nadu, particularly the Coimbatore, Tirupur, Erode region. You find a lot of migrant laborers working, and Chennai also hosts a lot of migrant workers. But with 32 trains, people, there was a huge rush, and people who came from their factories, who were staying in their factories, and they came to the station, were not let back inside the factory. The factory owner refused to give them accommodation or refused to take care of them by giving them food. Till then, in the month of May and June, April and May, much of these workers were allowed to be housed in the factory. But once they left the premises of the factories, they had no opportunity to get back. So the state was in a big mess. It again had to find ways to feed these migrant laborers who were thrown from their factories. And again, we had to see how to prevent the corona infection among the workers. So these all became very major issues in Tamil Nadu. Kerala took a much better stand. It demanded more trains and it received a good number of trains because they have a lot of migrant workers from Assam, West Bengal, Jharkhand, and Bihar. And they were much better organized. They provided food for the workers, they provided medical aid for the workers, migrant workers, and they put them on trains with water and food and sent them back home. But workers from Maharashtra, Delhi, Uttar Pradesh, Gujarat, they did not find much transport. They were forced to walk back home without food and water. So this was the condition. So overall, next slide, please. Rights of the migrant workers. When you look at the slide on rights of the migrant workers, you would find that a migrant worker is an invisible person. In and around our homes, in the marketplace, we find a lot of migrant workers. We take them for granted. We don't bother to ask them from which state or which place they come from. They are the hawkers, vendors, auto drivers, taxi drivers, working in the hotels, working in shops. They are the people who are involved in many construction jobs. And we just look at them as construction workers. We hardly bother to look at them as people who could have possibly migrated from some other place and come here. Only we are apprehensive of them when we hear them speak a different language, and because they look rough, like ruffians, and they might at times be a violent person. So we are afraid of them. Other than that, they are mostly invisible. These are people who are involved in providing us with water, with food, and homes. So when you see,
Professor Samuel, you may restrict your presentation to 5 minutes.
right, thank you. I'll do that. So when you look at the migrant worker, most of these workers are absolutely invisible. So when the Supreme Court said that they have to be transported, one of the major issues that you found is that they have a lack of transport, and very few states have gone into the aspect of taking care of them in a proper manner. Most states simply abandoned them, and many of them lost wages. Since most of these workers had come there to the place of work on an arrangement, since the lockdown occurred, they were not paid the wages as based on the arrangement that had been made. So the non-payment of wages put them into a lack of money, and they could not pay for their way back. They had problems to access to food. So when the Supreme Court came up with the thing that they have to be transported, the problem was all the states said that you have to get an electronic pass before you could transport people. So this e-pass became a major issue, because in many places, many state governments either refused to give e-pass, or when they gave e-pass, they gave it for a restricted period. So there was a problem of getting an e-pass. And since the Shramik trains were not available, efforts were made to transport these migrant workers by road, on trucks and on buses. Now, to transport a migrant worker from Madurai, from Tamil Nadu to Jharkhand, it costs 8,000 rupees. So to transport 40 migrant workers, it costs anywhere between 3,20,000 rupees. It was not easy. It was not possible. So, but yet a few donors came forward and such transport facilities were made available. And then the collectors and the state, because they have to submit to the Supreme Court, the state acted in providing e-passes and made arrangements for buses. Most of these buses, which were hired from transport agencies, they made a lot of money out of these migrant workers at 8,000 rupees per ticket, per seat. And you had to maintain physical distancing within the bus. So migrant workers were simply not able to be transported on road unless there was state backing. And on top of that, when they reached home, they again found problems that their families were suffering without food and they had no access to work in their own villages. Now you find many of the migrant workers are interested in coming back. So this is the whole issue of migrant workers in India today. But the problem is, in what manner is the government of India going to take care of these migrant workers after COVID has exposed these migrant workers that they are the main drivers of Indian economy? One thing government has to do is it has been issuing them Aadhaar cards. Based on their Aadhaar cards, the government should provide them certain social security benefits, should recognize their work output, should provide them with better wages, should pass and specify the minimum wage act be implemented. So these are some of the issues that I would like to present in front of our August audience. And I thank Madurai Kamaraj University for having given me this opportunity to present the problems faced by migrant workers in transit to their home. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor, for the nice and simple and elegant presentation. Now the floor is open for question answer session. So floor is open for questions. Yes.
Hello, sir. I am. Hello, sir.
Just tell me, sir.
Okay, sir. I am Pradeep Kumar from Kerala. Actually, sir, migrant workers are of different nature in India. So you cannot say that they are same across different states. They are of different characteristics. So should we think of classifying these migrant workers into different categories depending upon the vulnerabilities that they face and adopt a program accordingly? Because the migrant workers from Kerala to other states are different from those coming to Kerala from other states. For example, migrant workers from Punjab to other states are of a different kinds. So I think we need to have a different approach towards different type of migrant workers in our country. So we need to classify them on the basis of the vulnerabilities they face. What is your opinion?
Sir, Pushparaj, can I answer?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
To Dr. Pradeep Kumar. Yes, Dr. Pradeep. I'm happy that you are coming up with a question like this. See, the whole problem is till date, migrant workers are invisible. The government of India and the state governments have never bothered to register them because they were worried that if they register, they have to pay social security benefits, medical benefits, and they have to give all other attendant benefits. So, government of India and the opportunity for industry also did not want them to be registered. Basically, because this gave them the opportunity to pay low wages. If you hire a person locally, you have to pay a much better wage. In Kerala itself, you would have seen domestic workers get a higher wage in Kerala than in Tamil Nadu when you look at the comparison of domestic workers. So likewise, construction workers also. In Kerala, they are paid more. And Punjab hires migrant workers only particularly at the harvesting of wheat. And many in other periods, they do not use migrant workers to that extent. So when you see overall, the first important thing is registering these migrant workers before we categorize them. Once we are able to register and find out the total quantum of migrant workers, then definitely there is a need to categorize, as you say. Because we need to find out which are the migrant workers who have been consistently going for agricultural work, who are the migrant workers who have been going as, female, more or less, they go to work in the the construction industry or as domestic workers in most cases. In some cases, females are going and working as nurses. So we need to categorize them. And we have to see not only that they are given protection, because in many of these domestic workers, they face a lot of sexual harassment. Many of these women who work in construction sector, they face a lot of sexual harassment. So they need to be given protection also. So categorizing these migrant workers is definitely a necessity, but only after you register them. Right now, what I would advocate is the government of India should register these migrant laborers on the basis of their Aadhaar cards. And once their Aadhaar cards, based on the Aadhaar cards, once they are registered, then the government can make some provision to pay certain amount of money to their families. When there is illness and when there is see particularly bonus. In industry, you get paid bonus. And these migrant workers don't get even wages. So how can we talk about bonus to them? And if they fall ill, they are completely in doldrums. They don't get any kind of support from anybody. So in that respect, we first need to recognize the fact that India is dependent on migrant workers. Then we can categorize them. Thank you.
Now, actually, a few more questions have come in the chat box.
Any other question?
Anuja, actually,
Or any other comment from Dr. Pradeep Kumar, please?
yes, Pradeep Kumar.
Sir, what you have said is right, but my point is that we have some policies for the workers in villages, for example, in NRVs like that. But such policies have not been evolved for these migrant workers. Although these migrant workers still continue to be an important part of our labor
Kamaraj, I am
market.
not able to hear.
Hello, 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 hello. Can you?
Pradeep Kumar sir, please keep your background TV volume, sir.
Audible.
Okay, am I audible, sir? Hello?
Yeah. Reduce your background volume. Actually, some extra voice is coming. Extra noise is coming. Pradeep?
Hello, sir. Hello, can you hear me? Right? Hello?
Sir, Asi sir, could you hear him? Could you hear Dr. Pradeep? Actually,
Hello?
he went off. No, Pradeep, hold on. Actually, he went off. Actually.
Okay.
Dr. Samuel? Dr. Samuel? Hello?
So 1 minute, sir.
Please.
Dr. Samuel? There is no connection.
We'll wait, sir. We'll wait till it gets connected back.
So 1 minute, sir. The line was disconnected. Try again, sir.
Okay. Yeah.
Dr. Samuel?
So
We'll wait.
sir.
We'll wait. In between, actually, if there is Anuja Sharma is there, you may ask question straight instead of posing question. Actually, you may ask question now. Anita and Ajit is also there. Actually, Ajit may also raise question. The poster question can be asked.
Directly they can ask questions.
Yes.
Hello.
Instead
Hello.
of giving explanation.
Anuja, hold on for a second.
Okay.
Please hold on.
It's okay.
Bhaskar, any update?
Sir, 1 minute, sir. Sir, try to reconnect, sir.
Yeah. Pushpa sir, we will wait for.
Yes. Yes. என்னாச்சு கட்டாயிச்சோ? enable பண்ணணுமா? சரி சரி. Bhaskar, kindly enable him. Actually, he is trying.
Again கொடுத்துட்டேன் சார் அவர்.
Yes. He has been trying, but no, he is not getting through. That is the issue.
Okay.
Was it over? Has he come? Kannan sir, are you ready with your this rapid report? Dr. Kannan? Dr. Kannan, can you hear me? Kannan? Dr. Kannan?
Pastor sir, என்னாச்சுமா?
சார் ஒரு ரிக்வெஸ்ட் கொடுத்துட்டேன் சார், ஜஸ்ட் கிளிக் பண்ணா போதும் சார்.
சரி, அவருக்கு நேரா போன்ல கனெக்ட் பண்ணுங்க.
பேசுறேன் சார். சார் த்ரூ மொபைல்ல இருந்து கனெக்ட் பண்றாங்க.
ஓகே ஓகே.
Dr. Pushparaj?
Yes sir. Yes sir.
Whether Kannan is online?
I don't know, actually I tried.
Yeah. When I see him people list, but he didn't enter into online.
Okay. Then we'll go straight to the next session.
Yeah.
Shall we wind up otherwise?
Yeah.
Anish, actually, we'll see whether we can connect with Professor Samuel. After the presentation, we may have question and answer session with Professor Samuel if he connected. Right?
No,
Let
you
us
can.
wait. Fine. Actually, so
Dr. Pushparajan,
yes, sir.
then you can request Dr. Muniani to give the report.
Yes.
Instead of Dr. Kannan, he is saying some technical problem to connect with the computer.
Yeah.
Therefore, you can request Dr. Muniani to give a report.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Madam Chitra, do you have any comments to make, ma'am? Okay. Then we'll go to Professor Muniani to give a report.
Okay.
Yes, Dr. Muniani, you may go ahead.
Sir, please unmute and talk, sir.
Now, I would like to thank all participants who have participated in the 2 days international webinar on challenges and opportunities for migrant laborers in the age of COVID-19. Now, I express my sincere thanks to Professor Samuel Asiraj, Department of Sociology, Director, Center for Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policy, Manamaniam Sundara University, Tirunelveli, for acted as a resource person on this webinar. Now, and Dr. Pushparaj, Chairperson of the technical session. Excellent Dr. Samal Raj, excellent performance of the technical session on this theme. And now this India, second most population country in the world, but already we know about that. This in India, more than 70% of rural areas and a majority of working population are engaged in agriculture sector. Already we know this agriculture cannot be consistent and dependable occupation. So most of the people migrated one place to another place. So mostly rural migration, rural urban migration, interstate migration, intra-state migration, etc. Migration of human beings in search of better economic and social opportunity. It is not a new phenomenon. Better economic means economic development in the family. So this impact of COVID-19 in Indian economy totally lost. Impact of coronavirus lost a 5-month lockdown. There is no economic activities. This problem two sides affected by the people. First one, this don't get wage or income. Another side suffering from the family. Impact of coronavirus. Then most of the industries, this lockdown, this affected restaurant, IT industries, hotel industries, and auto industries, airlines, construction and real estate, textile industries, metal and mining, consumer and retailer, agriculture and allied activities like that. In terms of unemployment problem, day by day increases, poverty increases, starvation, hunger, death, and reduce the per capita income, decline in the gross domestic product (GDP), day by day increases of COVID-19 cases. We expecting GDP growth to 10.8% in 2020-21. But it may be decrease GDP growth of 0.8% in 21-22. Some other countries no GDP growth. Some other countries negative GDP growth. Some other countries low GDP growth like UK, US, China, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, South Sudan, Yemen, Greece, Ukraine, Iran, like that. So day by day these COVID cases increase also. This is due to increase the problem such as inadequate housing facilities, sanitation and medical, poor implementation of production under the interstate migration and rural to urban migration like that. So I request you can see it is evolved the framework, reoriented and restricted policy suitable for migrant laborers to alleviate the prevailing pathetic conditions. Okay, now once again, thanks to all of you on behalf of the School of Economics, Madurai Kamaraj University and Youth Welfare Department. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, respected participants.
Yes.
The first session has been completed. The second day, third session has been completed very, very successfully. Professor Samuel Asiraj sir expressed his views in his topic very elaborately and innovatively. And Dr. Pusparaj chaired this session very, very nicely and had a good, made a good rapport with the questioners and participants. Dr. Muniandi also reported the session in a very systematic way with a good preparation. And my respected participants, before going for the technical session 4, the final session, there is an announcement. Though a lot of people have been registered, the certificates will be provided only for those who are in the session up to end. The end of the session, feedback form will be sent by us. That is also filled by you and sent to us. Those who attended the seminar up to the end and filled the form, feedback form to us alone will get certificates. Others cannot. This is strictly imposed by our authorities. Therefore, we cannot those who are registered all cannot be get certificate. Those who attended the seminar fruitfully for the last 2 days, as well, they given the feedback alone will be given the certificates. Thank you very much. Pushparaj sir and chairperson Swami Kiran sir, shall I go for session 4?
Dr. Pari, can I just say a few words?
Of course, why not? Mr. Pastor?
So I would like to apologize to the participants. My connection got cut, so I was not in a position to take your question. But one question which I saw in the chat was, why can't these migrant workers get jobs in their own state? See, in India there is an uneven development. Certain states are much better developed than other states. So people come in search of better wages into states which are providing jobs. In states like Bihar, Uttarakhand, Chhattisgarh, Assam, Rajasthan, don't have jobs. So people are coming in search of jobs, places where they can get better wages, better jobs, so that they can have some kind of social security built up by their remittances back home for their own needs. So this is something that I need to tell you. Because remittances today play a major role with regard to migrants. Okay, and but the unevenness of the economy does not permit sufficient remittances to go back home. Migrant workers are finding it difficult because of the cost of living and to improve the quality of life. Thank you. But I would welcome your questions later through the chairperson of this seminar. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. We'll hand over the session to organizers. Thank you so much. Now it is over to Professor Muniandi. Dr. Muniandi may take over. Dr. Muniandi? Pari sir, you may take over.
Yeah, thank you very much. Dr. Swami Kiran sir, shall we take over the session? Dr. Swami Kiran sir, Pushparaj sir, I am going now, okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now, thank you very much for all. And the thing is, now we are going for the final session today. The final session will be shared by our respected Associate Professor, Department of Environmental Economics, Madurai Kamaraj University, Dr. K. Sadasivam. He is such a great man in his subject, and he is having a large knowledge in his subject. Such a knowledge-pulling man is going to be the chairperson of this final session. Dr. K. Sadasivam sir will be the chairperson. Resource person will be from Sri Lanka. He is assistant professor, Department of Economics and Statistics, Faculty of Arts, University of Peradeniya, Sri Lanka. Dr. P. Vinayakadasan. Rapporteur will be Dr. M. Chitra, assistant professor, Department of Economics, Madurai, Kamaraj University. Now, I would like to request Dr. K. Kamaraj to take over the session, please.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Please, sir, take over the session. Thank you.
Yes. Good morning to everybody. Honorable Vice Chancellor of Madurai Kamaraj University and respected Registrar in charge of Madurai Kamaraj University and Dr. Swami Kannan, Chairperson, School of Economics, and Dr. Pushparaj, HOD of Department of Econometrics, and organizers of this international webinar, Dr. C. Muniandi, Department of Econometrics, School of Economics, and Dr. S. Pari Parameshwaran, Member Syndicate, Department of Youth Welfare, Madurai Kamaraj University. And the rapporteur for this session is Dr. M. Chitra, who is an assistant professor in the Department of Economics, School of Economics. Dear participants, I am very happy that I have been given such an opportunity to share a session, technical session on the challenges and opportunities for migrant laborers in the age of COVID-19. In this webinar, we have in our midst Dr. T. Vinayakadasan, Senior Lecturer, Department of Economics and Statistics, University of Peradeniya, Sri Lanka. On behalf of the organizers and the Kamaraj University, let me at first welcome Dr. T. Vinayakadasan, sir. Professor Vinayakadasan, welcome to Kamaraj University. As far as the topic of the 2 days international webinar is concerned, it is very relevant one because we have been facing the global pandemic, that is COVID-19 pandemic. In particular, we can say that migrant laborers have been affected very much. In the last technical session, I have been hearing the explanation given by Dr. Samuel Raj, Asif Raj, who is the head of the Department of Sociology, Madurai University. He has elaborately deliberated on the topic. Now I don't know on which particular topic Dr. T. Vinayakadasan is going to deliver, but I am sure that he will deliver a testimonial lecture to the participants. And I thank the organizers, Dr. C. Muriyandi and Dr. Bari Parameswaran, for having given this golden opportunity to chair this session. And this session will be systematically recorded by Dr. M. Chitra, I think. Dr. Chitra is online, I hope. He will record all the things and he will act as a report here. With these few words, I am glad that I invite Dr. T. Vinayakadasan, Senior Lecturer, Department of Economics and Statistics, University of Peradeniya, Sri Lanka, to deliver his views on this webinar. Professor T. Vinayakadasan, now the session is handed over to Dr. T. Vinayakadasan. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Sir, please unmute and talk, sir.
Pardon?
So, thank you very much and good morning to all. First of all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to organizing committee of Department of Econometrics, School of Economics, and Department of Youth Welfare Studies, School of Youth Empowerment for giving these great opportunities to present my topic in this international webinar on challenges and opportunities for migrant workers in the age of COVID-19. Under this theme, today I am going to present about migrant workers women and children in the age of COVID-19. Let me share my slides.
So, any help need?
Yeah, I wanted to share my slides.
How to open the slide, sir?
Yeah, it was in open. It is in open.
You don't minimize, then control tab, go to the meet portal
Okay, now.
and share now. Yeah, now visible, sir.
So,
Yes, sir.
actually, I'm not going to explain about one particular country or one particular state about the COVID-19 and the impact on women and children. So, I'm going to explain about the general view as a global. Therefore, yes, in the first section, I'm going to explain about the situation of the COVID-19 currently, then how the migrant workers are affected by the COVID-19, then especially targeting the women and children, then providing some policy suggestions for to mitigate the COVID-19 and empower the economy. So, coronavirus is not a new to the world. Actually, the coronavirus has started since 2002 and with the name of severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus, we call SARS-CoV. And also from 2012 to present with the name of MERS-CoV. But the number of death toll in the worldwide is less than 1,000. Based on the website news, around 600 total death toll was happened during this period. However, the COVID-19 becomes serious concern by each country and has spread significantly all over the world. Since it is first time started in China from December 2019, now World Health Organization claiming this as a global pandemic. So this table provides some pictures. The mostly affected countries of total confirmed cases and the total death toll. Well, as at early June, around 6.5 million total confirmed cases and total death toll was 388 lakhs. But as of July 21st, 2020, it was more than double total confirmed cases, around 14.8 million, and death toll was 613 lakhs. So that's the world average. When it comes to India, as of early June, only 6,000 death toll was confirmed, but in July 21st, India was the place of 3 and more than 28,000 death toll. So I am not going to explain other countries because since we don't have the time. And now the COVID-19 pandemic continues to unfold worldwide with direct on people's health and deepening on socio-economic impact. The number of countries have begun lifting lockdown and containment measures, but these continue to affect large numbers of workers, significantly reducing economic activity and working time. However, considering the economy, now some countries have already begun the process of relaxing the policies and restrictions to make a new normalcy for purposes of gradually reopening the business in order to bring the economy and normal way. So as per the advanced prediction by IMF, there are several key indicators may hold to multi-year low for next few months or quarters or some couple of years. Especially the decline in the demand and economic growth. So IMF predicted that economic growth will decline to -3% in 2020, which was 2.9% in 2009. And also slowdown in both private and public investment due to supply side disruption and the demand increases, and then there should be a high inflation. This is the prediction of the IMF, but the current issue is a different scenario. According to the data, and some countries are relaxing their policies, and then they started to start some industry work. And also, WTO forecasted that the world rate will be expected to fall by between 13 to 32% in 2020 as a percentage of global GDP. And also, unemployment is rises day by day. And so we know that the education system totally affected by this COVID-19. And even though now there are some online teaching started. So apart from this source economic impact, there should be a additional challenges linked to their precarious legal status, the associated restriction on their mobility, and the physical and mental distress stemming from forced displacement their home countries. And this table explain about some labor migration and confirmed COVID cases. So the second column explain about the confirmed cases per 100,000 population. So the countries are ordered accordingly. Then the third column explain about the migrant as a share of population in percentage mid of 2019. And the fourth column share of working age migrant 20 to 64 years in percentage in migrant stock percentage mid of 2019. Then others older population migration. So according to the migrant as a share of population, the number one is Germany, the number two USA, then UK, Italy, and France. So different age group face varying vulnerabilities as both migrant and as a part of certain period of life in life. Globally, about 12% of all international migrants are 65 years and older. However, in most of the 15 countries with highest number of confirmed cases, persons aged 65 years and older represent a lower share in international migrant stock compared to their share in general population. India, Brazil, India, Brazil. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
India, Brazil, France, Pakistan are the only countries where this is an exception. 14th of the 15 countries with the highest number of confirmed cases, between 62% to 86% of migrants are estimated to be of working age. So migrant workers are also at risk of being exposed to by COVID-19 by working in sectors where home-based work is not possible. According to the ILO estimate, as of 2020, June 15, 55 million jobs could be lost worldwide as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. So warning that certain groups such as those in less protected and low-paid jobs, particularly migrant workers, will be disproportionately affected by this crisis. The Council of Global Union has warned that workers are on the front line of economic, social, and health impact of COVID-19. Daily wage, especially daily wage migrant workers are among the hardest hit due to the temporary halt in most job sectors. Many of these migrant workers have run out of money and we need to rely on food aid distributed by the government and CSOs. According to the research by Harold Gaibo in March 2020, he explained that COVID-19 could be fundamentally changing the face of global migration in at least the following key ways. Number one, due to the moving or control, with the exception of some key personnel, especially doctors, dentists, and some administrative high-level posts, limits the migrant workers' travel to work and travel for work. So, millions of migrant workers had to deal with loss of income, food shortages, and uncertainty about their future. In most industries, migrant workers, many of whom are on temporary visas, in this situation, either they have to find another job which is suitable under their current visa in time economy before being deported from the migrant country, or they need to get a different type of visa or try to get one of the very restricted flight to back to home, their own home country. These are the likely to dealing with the even greater economic hardship for these migrated women, migrated workers. not stuck. Hello?
It is visible,
I'm
sir.
able-
Continue, sir. Continue, sir.
Yeah, but the slides was stuck. Wait, see.
Sounds close and reopen, sir. Again.
Uh, okay.
No visible, sir.
The slides is not moving. I don't know why. It's okay.
Yeah. So just
So
maximize
many.
the slide, sir.
Okay.
Full screen the slide.
Full screen. Okay.
Yeah, now visible, sir. Now
Many
yes.
migrant also died due to the lockdown, with the reason ranging from starvation, suicide, extortion, road and rail accident, police brutality, and delay of timely medical care. So, as our Professor Samuel Asirat mentioned, the same cases in the worldwide, the migrant workers are dying because they cannot return their own countries kindly, and in the migrated country they have a restricted medical treatment. Therefore, many of them are dying. Or even they are getting back, if they are internally displaced people, then when they are moving from one state to another state, they have to walk. Then while they are walking, they got tired and they are staying in some places, and while they are staying without food, many of them are there, so dying. So, however, presently some of the countries reopened the factories in certain level by following the health ministries or WHO instruction in order to bring the daily routine as a normal. So when jobs do become available, many countries will undoubtedly encourage business to hire citizens over migrants. So in this limited working, and they reopen some limited industries, so then they are giving the higher priority by their own citizen rather than the migrant. So in that case also migrants are affected by that case. So such a decision will have lasting effect on migrant workers, their families and their communities. So however, it is conceivable that in response to current and future moving control order, business will also accelerate development of automation capabilities, thereby removing some jobs often filled by the migrant more quickly. The second, according to the Harold Blackburn, the second also we all know, the second problem for the migrants, the global inequality, was already at its highest level in history. As of January 2020, around 2,153 people create more wealth than the world poorest 4.6 billion people in the world. The world's 22 richest men have more wealth than all the women in Africa. However, the inability of labor to move efficiently because of COVID-19 pandemic will impact future global output while putting migrant families themselves under greater financial strain. This will, in turn, increase the global inequality further among the migrant workers. So, in fact, global inequality is likely to be increased in the medium to long term, in part as the pandemic lasting impact on migration. The third and most important issue is the loss of remittance. We know that most of the women from developing countries, they are migrated to, especially for the Middle East or some other Europe countries, in order, especially for the women-carried families, in order to look after their families. Therefore, due to the COVID-19 crisis, many low-income and fragile states will be magnified the loss of remittances. Remittances flow into low-income and fragile states represent a lifeline that supports household as well as the provide much needed tax revenue for the government. Many developing countries heavily rely on remittance from citizens abroad or internally displaced in some other states. As of 2018, remittance flow to developing world as a whole received $529 billion, surpassing API, portfolio investment, and foreign aid as the single most important source of income from abroad. So in the next slides, I am explaining this in the figure. And the drop in remittance flow is likely to heighten the economic, fiscal, and social pressure on government of these countries already struggling to cope even in the normal times. So these are the scenario in 2018 based on the remittances, foreign direct investment net inflow, and the foreign aid and portfolio equity inflow. So we know that according to this graph, the remittances role is higher than the other three foreign aid. So in normal situation, the relationship between remittance and the GDP is a win-win. That is, there has to be a positive relationship between remittance and the GDP. Furnishing much needed labor to fuel the economies of host countries and providing much needed income to families in the migrant home countries. However, shocks like coronavirus to the economies of migrant host countries can be transmitted to those of the remittance recipient countries. For example, for a recipient country that receives remittance representing at least 10% of its annual GDP, a 1% decrease in the host country's output gap will tend to decrease the recipient country's output gap by almost 1%. So according to this Chai and Sami report, they are explaining that the output can be reduced more than 1 if they receive 10% the remittances. Remittances represent much more than 10% of GDP for many countries, led by Tajikistan and Bermuda at more than 30%. So this was explained in the next slide. So the person same day I explained this one. So these figures depict that 10 largest recipients of remittances are located in diverse regions, with the top one receiving more than 30% of the GDP through this channel, especially Tajikistan and Bermuda. They are receiving more than 30% of the GDP from the remittances. So these are, especially the Nepal also, they around 28% of the GDP from the remittances. So India and Sri Lanka, those countries are actually less than these countries in terms of the percentage of GDP. And the experts predict that the pandemic will carry a FDI flow below to remittance flow that may be even worse than during the previous financial crisis, like 2018 financial crisis. So 2008. So in this graph, we can see that in 2020, remittances will decline less than the FDI. So FDI is going to be decline more than the remittances in the next year. This is the IMF they forecasted, the World Bank they forecasted that the FDI is going to be decline more than the remittances in the 2020, and there should be a slight increment in 2021 in remittances. So according to the World Bank prediction, above figure revealed that remittances flow are expected to drop by about $100 billion in 2020, which represents roughly 20% drop from the 2019 level. As a result, this deepening hardship for families in poor countries. Thus, in this current crisis, poor countries can expect to experience both phenomena, capital flight as well as drop in remittance flow. So, if migrant workers overseas is significantly impeded by the economic shocks mentioned above, so source of income for families across the developing countries will be affected, creating a donation effect economies which further widening the inequality between the rich and poor countries. Fourth one is the very directly related to COVID-19, that is the health care. Since many low-skilled laborers, migrants, do not have option work from home, they must physically go to work, which putting them under greater risk of narrowing and spreading COVID-19, and putting them in a further risk since many of them do not have access to appropriate financially accessible health care. So normally the low-paid skilled workers or migrant workers, they heavily rely on the home and hospitals in order to get the treatment. So then they have a higher risk of getting infection. So UN report states that migrants and their families are often part of marginalized and vulnerable groups that are already experiencing economic hardship as a result of containment measures. So in an extreme case, that become more than norms as the pandemic deteriorates. For example, Iranian hospitals are refusing to treat Afghan migrants, resulting in many returning to home country with a health infrastructure all destroyed after decades of conflict. So the UN network on migration has called for more uniform, non-discriminatory approaches in line with international law by seeing unequal responses and increased racist reaction to migrants. So migrant workers, wage laborers work in the manufacturing and sanitation since many of them work in the informal sectors.
Munayam sir, audible? Sir, it is audible?
As March 8th, the spread of COVID-19, it is only a matter of time before a significant outbreak spread throughout more districts. So in IDP settlement, they have a crowded population, very poor sanitation, very poor disease surveillance, very poor health services. So this could be extraordinary dangerous. Much of this risk will be concentrated in the IDP camps. So the recently arriving refugees or asylum seekers face mandatory 2-week quarantines and vastly fewer or no integration services even after the 14 days due to mandatory country-wide restriction on workers going to work. So even after they release from the quarantine center, when they are at the home, they have to be self-isolation for 14 days. Then after that they have to go for the work because they have to meet their essential needs. But we know that the COVID-19, sometimes it takes more than 1 month to recognize. So then there's a high risk of spreading the COVID among the society. Then it becomes a social spreading. So enforced migration, such as coming by the country or state, as seen as going COVID-19, bringing COVID-19 with them. The public opinion from one country to another country will undoubtedly harden in way that will not soon go away. In addition, the most forced migrants are internally displaced. Hence, moving on to another pathway also means that these people will be stuck in or near the dangerous place that forced them from home in the first place. They are mostly from rural areas but live in cities for work for most of the year. Many have no serving and live in factory dormitories which were shut down due to the lockdown. This could be create opportunities for non-state actors to exploit injustice against the governments. So it could also cause hopeless people escaping harm to do so through the shadow irregular activity. So I am seeing this also from the migrant, then both countries can get the benefit. So I explained this one due to climate changes. I am leaving this one. And now especially targeting on the women migrant workers and the COVID-19, how the COVID-19 affect the women migrant workers. Women migrant workers around the world are on the front line of the COVID-19 pandemic, which is harming health, social and economic well-being worldwide with women at the center. Women migrant laborers work in essential but low-paid and vulnerable jobs as health and care workers, nurses, cleaners, laundry workers, placing them at higher risk of exposure to coronavirus. So women face compounding burdens. Overrepresented working in health system, continue to do the majority of unpaid hair workers work in household, high risk of economic insecurity, and increased risk of violence, exploitation, abuse, harassment during time of crisis and quarantine. The first, women's having responsibilities outside the home. So, in outside the home, women are leading the health response because of they are working in the health sector and they have a higher chance to affected by this COVID-19. So women constitute about 70% of the health workforce worldwide, and they make up around 85% of nurses and midwives in from the 104 countries from the data which we available. So exposing them to a greater risk of infection. From medical perspective, however, early evidence advocate that COVID-19 seems to hit men harder than the women. Fatality rate for men who have contracted COVID-19 are 60 to 80% higher than for women. However, as COVID-19 is spread around the world, the impact of the pandemic on women is becoming increasingly severe. Despite the fact that majority of the healthcare workforce is female, so I have explained this in the next slide, the women still make up only minority of senior positions, for example, physician, dentist, and administrative leadership position. So in the health sector, so these two figures explains about the distribution of the physician and the nurse by gender. So in most countries, male workers make up the majority of physician, dentist, and pharmacist, more than 70 or around more than 60 male, and 40 around 40 or 20 to 30, 40 is the female. And when it comes to the nurse, more than 70 is the female, and then less than 30 is the male. So then women having responsibility at home, they are and outside the home, since they are women are working as a caretaker, so nurse or midwife, they have a higher chance of getting the risk, and then it will spread to their families and the relative as well. And when it comes to the home, the women spend far more time than men on household chores and other unpaid work at home. Particularly, much women's unpaid work time is spent on child care. On average, OECD countries, women spend around 35 minutes in each day on child care activities, which is more than double the amount of time spent on child care activities by men. Also, many women provide care for elderly adult relatives, especially parents, even when they are employed. In addition, women are spending certain time of take care of ill and disabled patients. And when women are dealing with these people, and also they are working outside the home, then once they get infected, then there's a high possibility of getting the chance to spreading the COVID-19 also inside the families. So the COVID-19 will amplify women's unpaid work burdens. For example, due to school closure, childcare facilities will not only increase the amount of time that parents must spend on childcare and child supervision, but also force many to supervise or lead home schooling. So much of this additional burden is likely to fall on women apart from the work of cooking and cleaning inside the home. So at the same time, many of women migrant workers return from other states or other countries to their home country also face the same issues due to this COVID pandemic. So this figure explains about the gender gap in unpaid work. So female to male ratio of unpaid work ranges from 3 times more in Latin America and Caribbean to almost sometimes more in North Africa compared to other regions. In situations with the limited healthcare facilities and infrastructure, these care roles, which include caring for the sick and elderly, greatly inflate the chance of infection from pandemic like COVID-19. Beyond the infection, the COVID-19 race may also have further indirect effect on women's health and socio-economic, especially for the pregnant women. So now the women employment, income and poverty. How the COVID-19 affect the women employment and the income and how the poverty level was increased among the women and their families. The spread of coronavirus has interrupted global supply side and is forcing workers to remain at home because they are quarantined, sick or subject to lockdown. So, Professor sir, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Companies from variety of industries are finding themselves forced to interact and scale down operations. So according to ILO prediction, the substantial job loss will be likely to follow. For example, as at 15 June 2020, 55 million domestic workers could be impacted as a result of COVID-19. So among them, so ILO estimate that in the early stage of the pandemic, especially on March 15, 2020, 49.3% of domestic workers were significantly impacted. These figures increased 73.7% on May 15 and then slightly decreased as 72.3% on 4th of June. So therefore, the unemployment rate for black women increased slightly between April and May, and among the Latinas women Latinas men recorded the highest unemployment rate. So these are some data about the gender in some regions. So the Asian women, especially the migrant women, has unemployment rate was 16.4, and the black woman 16.5, then white woman 13.1, Latinas the highest unemployment rate, and also white men is 8.7%. So the evidence from the past economic and health crisis suggests that the shock on the scale of the COVID-19 pandemic often impact men and women differently. So, however, evidence from infectious disease driven economic crisis often point to sharper effect on women, in part because their roles as caregivers led to higher infection rate for women. In the context of COVID-19 crisis, the fear is that gender employment can leave women more vulnerable than men to job loss. These fears are particularly acute in many developing countries and emerging economies, where a large number of women workers continue to work in informal employment. This virus inevitably hit hard in the sector of air travel, tourism, retail activities, accommodation services, food and beverages service activities. So women make up large share of employment in many of these industries, above-mentioned industries, which are mostly immediately affected by COVID-19, especially across the OECD countries. On average, women make up 47% of employment in the air transport industry, 53% in food and beverages services, 60% in accommodation services, and 62% in the retail service sector. They lost their employment opportunities. And the next important industry that women lost their job is the garment manufacturing industry. So the garment manufacturing industry is likely to face disruption from the both sides, supply side and the demand side. And then economy downturn. So women are heavily overrepresented in this industry. The Works Rights Consortium estimate there are a total of 60 million workers. Out of them, 78% are women working in these industries worldwide. The impact of COVID-19 on garment workers is devastating. Early indication estimate a total of 20 billion euro of order worldwide can be cancelled due to COVID-19. Bangladesh, which is the second biggest apparel producer, an estimate of 6 billion in export revenue is estimated to be lost. This is in turn is devastating for textile workers who are losing their livelihood and sometimes their home as a result. Pakistan, 1 million workers and Bangladesh, 2.27 billion workers are affected by this cancel of order. Many of these workers are young women, often their families primarily wage earner, and the impact on them will be devastating. Then these job losses and the income losses will lead to the poverty. So regardless of the gender impact of job and business loss, women are likely to be more vulnerable than men to any crisis driven loss of income. So 70% of the world extremes poor are women. Across the countries, on average, women incomes are lower than the men's and their poverty rates are also slightly higher than the men. So women also often hold less wealth than the men for a variety of reasons. And because of their greater caring responsibilities, it is often more difficult for women to find alternative employment and income streams following layoff. So these are some figures about the poor or low level of income for the women and say based on their sex. So, but in this, based on this data, they are both women and men. They have the same equal distribution about this poor. Say East Asian and Pacific 10% female and 10.6 male. 0.5, 0.5. Latin American, Caribbean 4.6 and 4.3. South Asia, female to 38.7 and male 38.2. Sub-Saharan Africa 46.1 and 46.3. So when we look at this, the male have a more slightly more than the female. So employment and income loss, supply side disruption and rising the demand will tend to increase the poverty and causing economic insecurity among the migrant workers and also the normal workers. So worldwide. And now number 5, violence against the women. Worldwide, more than 1 in 3 women has experienced physical and or sexual intimate partner violence or non-partner sexual violence in their lifetime. So this crisis is likely to be only worsened as a result of COVID-19. The social consequences of COVID-19, that is inability to go outside the household, loss of social interaction, all day presence of children following school closure, tension inherent to forced cohabitation are likely to constitute reason for some to justify violence. Social norms justifying violence against women are associated with a greater violence against the women. So there's a positive relationship between these two. So the next slide is explaining about this. There was one survey was done in OECD countries to estimate this relationship. Then we saw the positive relationship between these two. So this is the base and the prevalence of domestic violence over lifetime and attitude towards the domestic violence. Then the survey was done in OECD countries. Then they found a positive relationship between those two. So, and the potential downstream consequences of COVID-19, including higher unemployment, lost wages, and job insecurity, are particularly dangerous for women in abusive relationships, as economic control is a key tool of abusers. Financial insecurity may force victims to remain with their abusers. And healthcare, even the general view also we have discussed about the healthcare among the migrant workers. Now how the healthcare affecting the women migrants. So human rights groups are worried about the health and social impact of COVID-19 on migrant workers, especially for the women in all over the world. There are nearly 67,000 infections reported so far in the 6 countries that are members of the Gulf Cooperation Council. So poor living and working conditions put these groups at higher health risk. There are about 20 million migrant workers from South and Southeast Asia and Africa working in these 6 GCC countries, which include Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, and Oman. So they represent 90% of the workforce. They are as well as 10% of migrants globally. So health-related major problems for women in this area. Overcrowding makes labor camp a virus incubator. Quarantine worsen unfit living condition and work condition. Expulsion and repatriation or few avenue for appeals. So this makes them more affected by infections. Facing many challenges and barriers, migrant and so now how the children affected by the COVID-19. So the facing many challenges and barriers, migrant and displaced children stand to be hit hard by socio-economic impact of COVID-19. In 2019, around 33 million children were living outside of their country of birth, including many who were forcibly displaced across the borders. At the end of 2018, a total of over 31 million children were living in forced displacement in their own country or abroad due to the violence and conflict. So this includes some 13 million child refugees, around 1 million asylum seeking children, and an estimated 17 million children displaced within their own countries. According to the UNICEF estimation, 3.7 million children live in refugee camps or collective centers. Then COVID-19 threatened to bring even more uncertainty and harm to their lives. The UN report proved the impact on children in general into 4 dimensions, especially poverty, survival and health, and then learning and safety. So first we look at the survival and health of children due to COVID-19. So worldwide, 52% of migrant children and over 90% of displaced children live in low and middle income countries. So their access to public health services for migrant and displaced children and their families may be limited and in some cases deliberately avoided, particularly if they are undocumented. So according to the UNICEF 2020 study, in Somalia, Ethiopia, and Sudan, so that almost 4 in 10 children and young people on the move do not have access to facilities to properly wash themselves. Half of the respondents aged between 14 to 24 years, according to the UNICEF report, who self-identified as a migrant and refugee indicate that they did not see a doctor when they needed. So now public health products and services have faltered due to the risk posed by COVID-19. More unaccompanied migrant children have been forced to live on the street or unsanitary open overcrowded flats. So within the limited access to water and sanitation which can facilitate the spread of infectious diseases like COVID-19, millions of children are confined in orphanages, detained in the justice system and other institutions. Access to basic medical services is also often poor, lacking in these settings, putting children's health at greater risk if they fall ill. Similarly, millions of internally displaced children, migrants are living overcrowded camps or informal reception centers where basic COVID-19 prevention measures such as frequent hand washing, social distancing are nearly impossible. And then economic insecurity and domestic violence. As the global death toll increases due to COVID-19, large number of children will be opened and vulnerable due to exploitation and abuse. The United Nations Secretary General has reported that horrifying global surge in domestic-based violence due to the COVID-19. So World Bank has suggested that COVID-19 will push some 40 to 50 million, 40 to 60 million people into extreme poverty, causing stark economic consequences or economic insecurity. So yet migrant families and children are less likely to be included in the economic recovery initiative, which are mainly aimed at formal sector and business. For children staying behind with caregivers, when one or both parents have migrated for work, remittance are often critical source of income and income and security. This is especially the case of low and middle income countries, where the remittance alleviate poverty, improve the nutritional outcome, and are associated with high education spending on reduced child labor. A recent analysis estimates that remittance will register a 7% decline in 2020 related to 2019 from $76 billion to $70 billion. Around 100 million women send remittance every year, amounting to half the US $601 billion sent in 2016. So in 2019, half an estimated 272 million migrants who live and work outside their countries urban origin were women. Of these women, approximately 60.6 million were migrant workers. It is estimated that 3% of remittance are used to cover the essentials such as food, housing, school, and healthcare, according to the UN report. The remittance increase as estimated, which leading more children drop out school, seek work, migrate, or to be subjected to side marriage or trafficking. The next impact on education for due to COVID-19, the pandemic has affected 1 billion school students, it is more than 91% from the at least 180 countries worldwide, and is likely to be exacerbate the vulnerabilities of the millions of migrant and displaced learners around the world. Even before the COVID-19 crisis, refugee children were twice more likely to be out of school than the other children. Migrant and displaced children may face numerous obstacles accessing classroom, ranging from enrollment issues to lack of available instruction to language due to language barriers. So where learning has switched to online delivery, access to online resource and reliable electricity is out of reach for many, especially those living in remote locations, refugee camps, or informal settings. In sub-Saharan Africa, where more than a quarter of the world refugees reside, 89% of the learners do not have a household computer and 82% lack internet access. Nearly 120,000 Syrians live in Jordan, two largest refugee camps, where a large portion of residents are children, many of whom have seen war dependent years in the classroom. As the nation came under lockdown, 32 schools in the camp were closed, impacting 18,000 students who now rely on the national television broadcast to learn. UNHCR is helping these students to continue their studies by increasing the supply of electricity to camp household from 8 to more than 12 hours each day. And also UNICEF is providing children learning materials and life skill message strengthened by the positive parenting message and related activities for parents. So these are the most affected countries locally and countrywide, and also some countries are reopened for the school. And impact on the protection and safety of the children. Experts predict that the death toll could be eventually reach around 10 to 40 million due to the COVID-19, which will inevitably leave many children without both of one parents or other caregivers. Women children are particularly vulnerable to trafficking and other exploitation, including sexual exploitation, both forced begging, selling goods on the street, and other child labor. Older children often drop out of school to try to support their family. Globally, around 152 million children were already engaged in the child labor before COVID-19 pandemic, with 73 million engaged in the hazardous work. Lockdown, income loss, child labor, and confinement to small places increase threat to safety and well-being of children, including mistreatment, gender-based violence, exploitation, social exclusion, and separation from the caregivers. These impacts are likely to be even more acutely felt in humanitarian setting where the stresses of daily life are already severe and high production services less available. Children are spending more time online due to the school shutdown and may be anxious or lonely because of isolation and confinement, making them more vulnerable to online predators. So these are the impact on children due to COVID-19. So when we summarize the topic, the COVID-19 pandemic will have broad-ranging long-term humanitarian and socio-economic impact on migrant and displaced women and children. Many of these effects have yet to be seen. Sound policies and urgent action are needed to put migrant and displaced women and children at the forefront of preparedness, prevention, and response to COVID-19 to ensure health, safety, and protection for all today and for the long term. Some countries are already taking action to mitigate the risk of migrant. For example, Portugal has set an example by temporarily granting residency permits to all migrant and asylum seekers with a pending application, allowing them full access to healthcare and social services such as social benefits and housing. The Spanish government agreed to release the person in immigration detention after examining each case in light of the 6-day detention limit. Ireland introduced an unemployment payment scheme that is accessible to all regardless of legal status. The Malaysian authorities have said non-citizens, including those who are undocumented, that come forward for testing will not be arrested or detained. To better protect vulnerable migrants, Belgium authorities are transferring them into individual accommodation or other activities, bringing families together to media display. Cameroon, Colombia, Paraguay, Croatia, and Mexico are addressing the issue of violence against the children during the pandemic, including among migrant and displaced children with support. And so these are some policy suggestions. Actually, these policy suggestions are taken from the UN report and the World Health Organization report, and some of them are my idea. So since the line is limitation, can I continue or just limit this small introduction? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Can I continue or limit this because these policy recommendation are especially from the UN and World Health Organization policy report. So I know some of them are my idea. So maybe I have 3 or 4 slides. Especially to control the current and future economic insecurity, government of each country have to take this action. Then how migrant workers related policies designed by UN and World Health Organization, and children and women related policies which was designed by the UN and the UN organization. So this explaining about those things. So if you need it, I can send this slides to the and then we can share the participant.
Thank you. Okay. Dr. Mari Parmeswaran. Hello.
Yes? Yes, sir? Hello? Hello, Dr. Sadashivam, sir? Hello, Dr. Sadashivam?
Yes, yes.
Yes, I am online.
Dr. T. Vinay Dasan
Yes,
from the University of Peradeniya, Sri Lanka. He has elaborately deliberated on his topic, that is the impact of COVID-19 on migrant workers, women and children.
Yeah.
So he has divided his lecture into 4 parts. One is on migration workers, another was on women, and the third one was on children, and the fourth one was on the policy implications of the
impact of COVID-19. So his lecture was very useful in my opinion. Now the floor is open for any queries or questions and suggestions, etc. Please, participants, you can interact. You can unmute and post your questions, or you can send in the chat box. Dear participants, Pushparaj, do you have any opinion to share?
No, actually, let the people speak. Let the speak.
Yeah.
Let the people speak, sir.
Okay. Yes, yes.
We wait for the questions, sir. We wait for the questions.
Any questions?
Actually, one of the he asked me, is those policies are effective? He asked the question, but actually, policies we are deciding to help them, especially for the migrant. But how it is effective is depends on the economies of each country, whether it is locally or abroad. So especially they have migrated, then the migrated country, if the economy is well enough, and if they are really focusing on the humanitarian manners, then that policy will be effective. But if the country does not think about the humanitarian manner and only they are focusing on their locally, and that time the migrant workers or children or women will not, that their policy will not work. So it is depends on the economies of each country and then how they are thinking about the humanitarian manner. So UN or World Health Organization, they can decide any policies, but that policies will work effectively based on the each country, how they are attending those policies.
Well, thank you.
So
Another question from Anuja.
how to see the change of mind towards migrants in sustainable development framework? So actually, especially the mind of migrant, especially for the sustainable development growth, which will help for the in both ways. I have explained in one slide, but I have mentioned in one slide that benefits for both countries due to migrant workers, not only benefit for the recipient country, but also host country will be benefited because now some workers are low skilled workers, as our Professor Samuel said, and then some are high skilled workers. And since they are working in the internally displaced other states or foreign country, if the migrant workers are really effective, and if their GDP is increasing in both cases, then in that sense, GDP will increase and the poverty of the recipient country will decrease and the education system of the recipient country also will be increased, and the most of the sustainable development goals can be achieved from the remittances but which we are receiving from the migrant workers. And at the same time, the poor country also will get the benefit from the increase in GDP, and then they are getting the tax from the workers. So in those settings, both countries will be benefited. And also, then it is depends on the effectiveness of the industries and the workers and their and how the companies they have policies related to migrant social development sector they have. And then how the migrant they responded to and they effectively they are working in that country. Actually, mindset and migrant mindset and the sustainable development also depends on the each industry's policies and then the social protection, social welfare policies and depending on that. So another question, kindly share the slides, sir, would be very good. So I will send the slides to, actually I have sent the slides already, Paris, sir, but slides I have given, so I will send again.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Sir.
Any other question?
Hello? Yes, I'm okay.
If there is no question, you can invite reporter, ma'am. Dr. Chitra, please.
Okay. Now I invite Dr. Chitra to give her reporter's report. Dr. Chitra, madam?
Yes, sir. Sir, Honorable Chancellor, respected Register, Chairperson School of Economics, Dr. Swamikanan, sir, and Head of the Department, Dr. S. Puspraj, sir,
Yes.
the Organizing Secretary, Dr. C. Muniani and Dr. Pariparmeshwaran, and the Chairperson of this session, Dr. K. Sadasam, sir, and the participants of all over the India, good afternoon. This is Chitra from Department of Econometrics. The resource person, Dr. Dhanabala Singham Vinayakadasan from Peradeniya University, given the title Impact of COVID-19 on Migration, Workers, Women and Children. In the title, he's justified the title with his it's lateral thinking, it's provoking thinking made into the minds of all people, those who are participated in this session. So in the introduction part of COVID-19 migrant workers, he given the picture of the history of coronavirus and the data as on 21st July and then June 2020. He compared the picture of globally, USA and all other countries, 14 countries, in that the USA is standing in the first place in both the months, but the Brazil, which is in fourth place, is moved towards to second place. It's a very clearly he pointed out that the movements of the country from June to July, within a month, the means the trend of infected cases, how it's moving from one point to another all over the countries. And in the other way, he is pointed out the global economic growth. It's the decline of the global economic growth is also, he pointed out with the evidence of IMF report, April 2020, WTO, ILO, and the Council of Global Union also. And then labor migration, when he talking about this COVID, he confirmed the cases with the comparative pictures of 2019 globally, especially the age group of 65 years and older one. And with the evidences, he given the picture as the challenges of the migrant workers from reviews only, especially from selected reviews. The decline of remittance from the citizens from NRI that's abroad, and ODA, API, and pointed out the capital flight from the countries, the home country, and the issues of quarantine when the workers return to the home place. These are the points especially pointed out in the challenges and issues of the migrants. And further, the resource person, Dr. Vinayakadasan, revealed about the women migrant workers and what are the challenges they are facing under the conditions of COVID-19. Especially the negative, the spillover effect of this COVID-19 he picturized, and the unpaid work burden at home is increased, and the lack of jobs and then insecurity of the economic conditions, and then gender differences also pointed out. Further, he moved towards to the children vulnerability in that the displaced children and the children refugee, and then he pointed out the infected disease led the migrant children into vulnerable, especially in health wise and the social insecurities. In addition, that the last but not least, assistance pointed out from the global experience like Ireland, the unemployment payment, and in addition with his own ideas. Thank you, sir. It's a skeptical lecture. It's surely benefit to all the participants, those who are participating in this session. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam. To conclude this session, I should congratulate Dr. Vinayakadasan from Sri Lanka, and I should thank the school chairperson, Dr. Swamikanan sir, and HOD Dr. Pusparaj, and the organizers of this international webinar, Mr. Hello. Just a minute. Organizers of this webinar, Dr. C. Muniandi, Dr. Pari Parameswaran, for their efforts, sincere efforts to organize this webinar. And about the resource person, I should say that he has put enormous efforts in preparing slides. He has systematically delivered his lectures. For this, I thank Dr. Vinayak Dasan on behalf of the School of Economics and the whole, and on behalf of the organizers in particular. Thank you very much, sir. And now the session is handed over to the organizers. Thank you very much for everyone for giving me this opportunity. Thank you. Hi, Parameswaran. Hello. Hi, sir. Hi, Parameswaran, sir. Hello.
They are on the muted. They have muted their mic.
Oh.
That is the reason.
Sorry sir, please unmute.
Sir, put a message in chat box, sir.
Yeah, that will be fine.
So 1 minute, sir. Pushpa sir, please unmute, sir. Sir, please unmute, sir. Sorry, sir. Sir, please unmute, sir. The bottom of the screen.
He's not able to. That is the problem.
Sir, now connected, but it is now unmuted, sir. Muted.
Yeah.
Was he able to?
Sir, mouse கீழ கொண்டு போனீங்கன்னா காமிக்கும் சார். Mouse cursor கீழ கொண்டு போனீங்கன்னா mute button காமிக்கும். This unmute.
Yeah, clear now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Is it audible? Very good. Very good. Please. Yeah, thank you very much for the session chairperson, Dr. K. Sadashivam, Associate Professor, Department of Environmental University, and a resource person from Sri Lanka, Dr. my dear friend D. Vinayak Hassan, and a respected madam who was served as a reporter, Dr. M. Chitra, Assistant Professor, Department of Econometrics, Madurai, Kamaraj University. Among organizing secretaries, Dr. respected Muniandi sir requested me to give a vote of thanks. As per the request, now I come to the conclusion phase. After the vote of thanks, the feedback form will be sold by our respected technocrat, Mr. Bhaskaran, Engineer Bhaskaran. Then you just send the feedback form. Accordingly, your certificates will be started distribution from this afternoon to the end. Either tomorrow, day after tomorrow, whenever as and when it comes, it will deliver to your mail address, which was registered by through us. And the way of vote of thanks, Our respected Vice Chancellor, every day he is attending 1 or 2 or 3 webinars. And he is very vibrant and he is always encouraging all the department faculty members to use the COVID holidays, COVID pandemic situation, be always vibrant, the teachers to be very vibrant and the students also to be vibrant, for which he asked them to conduct number of webinars. Therefore, in connection with that, lot of series of lectures have been arranged by Madurai Kamaraj University various faculties. Today, our respected Dr. S. Pusparaj, Associate Professor, Kamaraj Department of Economics, has given a great chance to organize this webinar with the Department of Youth Program Studies. His initiative, as soon as we got, we spoke with him, he gave great thought to give consent to us. Thank you very much, sir, for the great help rendered to us. And after that, while we are approaching our respected chairperson, Swami Karan sir, he told me that Pali, this is purely because of our department, we are going to organize. I told him and said the reasons also. Department of Youth Welfare also highly related with you. The COVID, the migration area and the Department of Youth Welfare also joined with you. We can discuss a lot about that. Immediately he told me that if you are coming and joining with us, that is not at all a problem. We are allowing you great-heartedly. He gave the chance to us. Dr. Swami Karan sir, chairperson for economics. Thank you very much. And including respected Sadasun sir and Dr. Kannan, Chitra ma'am, Indra, and other faculty members of the economics faculty members. Everyone was helped us very, very, very helpfully and cooperated for this webinar very successful. I'll thank all the people from bottom of the heart of Pali Pravishna and Dr. Miyadi. Our Vice Chancellor is earlier. He is always burning his midnight oil for the development of the university, for which he gave great chance to us. Thank you very much for the Vice Chancellor who gave chance to conduct the webinar, as well as our respected Registrar in charge, Professor V.S. Vasantha ma'am. Thank you very much for his great concern to help us. And apart from that, the technocrats, my most respected Irudaya Rajan sir, the resource persons, Kannaki, Dr. Kannaki Vaidyanathan sir, Madam, and Professor S. Samuel Asiraj sir, and Dr. D. Vinayakadasan sir. Thank you very much for the great lectures without getting even remuneration. You will spend a lot of time. Your preparation and the lectures will not be on vain. That will be very fruitful. Near future for policy makers and policy decisions, and for making the migrant laborers to be saving their life. Your lectures and points will be helpful. Thank you very much for that. Finally, last not but least, I my respected Bhaskaran sir, technocrat, who is in IPAC. He helped a lot from the beginning, and for huge entrance in this, he helped, and for promotion also he helped. We cannot forget Dr. Bhaskaran. As a syndicate member, we will take him the right path to the Vice Chancellor's knowledge, what their effort, what they put in for that, and Mr. Engineer Rajabandi, who helped us to inaugurate the session yesterday with the Vice Chancellor Chamber. Thank you very much for the engineer Rajabandi sir. And another one friend, Engineer Madasami, he also helped a lot to organize the function. Thank you very much for everyone. And the participants especially, who helped me yesterday to today, very vibrantly who participated. Thank you very much. And another webinar will be on youth and community development on 4th and 5th. One Vice Chancellor of Kamaraj Open University and Professor of Nagpur University, Pachadil. Second day will be for the retired Joint Secretary from Indian University, as well as another one IAS or IPS officer going to deliver the lecture. That's why we are all again inviting you to join in that webinar also with the words wholeheartedly. We are thanking the department and department faculties, chairperson, and our another department of econometrics, and Vice Chancellor sir, Registrar, and everyone. Thank you. Now, Dr. Bhaskaran, we request you to send the feedback onto all the people.
Dear participants, the feedback link post in the chat box. Please see the chat box and submit your feedback, valuable feedback. Thank you.
And also, I would like to, sir.
Yes, sir.
Actually, really, I would like to thank for Madurai Kamaraj University and especially for you and Muniandi sir, Dr. Muniandi sir and Dr. Bhaskar sir for making a very good arrangement and calling several time for me to do very good arrangement. And Professor Pusparaja sir and especially for the chairperson of my session, Dr. Sadasivan sir and Chitra madam. Thanks for all and we'll meet very soon in the next webinar. Thank you all.
Dear participant, please check feedback link in the chat box. And also this 2 days program YouTube link also share.
Vinayagar sir, still you are in online, I hope. Hello. Vinayagar sir.
Yes, sir. I am sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, I am just emailing here to send the slides of my presentation to your email.
Okay, please, sir. Go ahead.
I will send you and then we will meet by mobile or laptop. So
Very, very often we'll meet. Don't worry.
okay,
We'll
okay.
talk. And
Okay, bye.
if any people who can speak excellently about youth and community development, please give the name to him. I'll order for report.
Okay.
They should be present the paper in such a way. If any people are there in Sri Lanka, tell me.
Youth and community development, no?
Youth and community
Okay,
development.
I will contact some of my lecturers and if they are willing to do, I will inform.
Suppose it is by this evening, we'll be happy because tomorrow you would prepare invitation.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir. Okay.
Post பண்ணிட்டீங்க. Excellent.
feedback அனுப்புறோம்ல.
Yes, sir.
Bhaskaran?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Feedbacks are started coming?
Yeah, already posted in the chat box, sir.
Okay.
Now receiving feedback only one, sir.
Yeah, let it receive. You tell me whenever you are telling, we will go. Leave from the meeting.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Up to that, we will be in the meeting.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
So now 67 people submitted the feedback.
Very good, very good, very good. Actually, 52 only was there in the meet.
Sir, actually the YouTube people also
Yeah.
feedback submitted.
Then okay, strength will be correct.
Okay, sir. Okay.
But those who are coming in the last, we need not give because there will be technical problem for us.
Okay, sir.
Okay.